Hey there, Monique. This is Kevin Butanowitz from the School District of Palm Beach County. We spoke very briefly there at the mini conference up in Tallahassee, and I'd really love to present at the May Sterling Conference. So I just wanted to give you a little snapshot of the coaching training that I mentioned, and so you have a little bit of something to look at the vet. So let's go ahead and I'll jump right to the actual slideshow presentation here. This is a coaching model that helps supervisors, managers, leaders have a successful coaching conversation. And we've been doing this training for 2 to 3 years now in our district. We picked a coaching model as we looked through a lot of different models. We picked one that we felt would be versatile enough to use for all the different work environments we have, which vary from academic support departments that help our schools to operations side of the house, business side of the house, IT side of the house, everything. And we've got great feedback over the past couple of years using this as a coaching model. So in the training, we first start off by asking people what are some of the characteristics of great coaches that they've had in their life, which could be a peewee coach, it could be a parent, a boss or a leader that they've professionally interacted with. We ask them, what are those characteristics? We also then ask them how do they build trust and rapport among the employees under their care. And then we share with them some ways that when we polled our leaders in our organization, found that there were some common ways that leaders built trust and rapport among their employees. And we do let them know that this training is not meant to give strategies on how to build trust and rapport. That's something that, based on the individual leader, based on the culture, the environment, should be, done to kind of put into the soil there so that people will be in an opportunity to grow. But we're here to talk about that coaching conversation. And we mentioned, obviously, this is all about having a relationship, that trust and rapport builds that relationship so you can have that in the soil so you can actually grow people. And so the outcomes of the training, the first one is to understand the process and mindset of having a successful coaching conversation. And what we ask everybody to kind of measure as a successful coaching conversation is imagine you're bringing someone in for a one-on-one meeting. You shut the door. That's an environment of anxiety, maybe some anxiety or some areas of resistance, will come out. And what we say is a successful coaching conversation is when the employee walks out and the employee knows they're going to take action and change something. And the supervisor, the coach knows that that employee is going to go out and they're convinced that they're going to go make some changes and they own those changes. And so we also then get them comfortable using the CLEAR model and the phases of it, the question strategies. The whole point is to say, give everybody something in their tool box to use. Take some of it, take all of it, take none of it, but it's just some great strategies and questions and techniques to use. So we then move into and ask them what are their greatest concerns around coaching, which no matter who we've done this with, we typically get the same answers, which is they're anxious about how is this message going to be received by the employee? Are there going to be any repercussions in the culture or resistance from this employee? Is there going to be resistance in the meeting? Is this actually going to get to some change of behavior or results? Is the meeting going to turn into a compliance meeting and something that may require documentation? So we get all those from everybody, and then we ask them what are the areas that they need to coach employees around. Is it common areas we always know are attendance, some type of compliance, not performing to expectations, and maybe even a high flyer who needs some extra guidance. So we get those all from our audience, and then we have them do a little practice. And the practice is meant to not be perfect, just to give us a typical example of what a one-on-one coaching conversation may look like in our organizations. So we get somebody to role play the supervisor, the coach, and somebody to role play the employee. And we actually ask the supervisor to come up with a scenario, or we can give them, we have a couple here, give them a scenario for each to act out. And they're in a fishbowl, we're all just listening. And we want it to be a typical conversation that will happen in a lot of our organizations. So we have 2 examples if needed that they can role play to, but most people can jump right into the roles because they've been in these positions before. So we use it as a baseline of a typical conversation because when we introduce the model, we then want to go through the steps and say, hey, how could we have better approached the language, the conversation, and gotten a better outcome in that conversation. So we go through the steps here, the CLEAR model. You can see them here. And what we do is we'll show a short video on each step. We'll instruct on it. We'll discuss it. And then there's a couple of small activities built in. So with the first, actually, before I get to that, we give everybody a one-page handout. And the whole point was we didn't want to give them a bunch of materials. We want to give them a one-pager that has a summary of the coaching model that they could put on their desk and this afternoon or tomorrow call somebody in and have a little bit of a guide, script in some cases, with question starters so that they can have a more successful coaching conversation. So a very concrete takeaway for them. So the first step of the model we go through is the contract phase. And that's really before you get into a conversation of trying to coach with somebody, you have to come to an agreement on what it is you want to have as an outcome, which may be, asking the employee, hey, do we agree that we're here to help you grow your leadership capacity? We're here because we need to address some performance concern, we need to increase customer satisfaction, fix a process, whatever the case may be, but coming to an agreement that the employee actually agrees with it as well. If that doesn't happen, you end up chasing the employee in the conversation the whole time, trying to get them to agree with what you want as a supervisor and coach. So we have some techniques on how to get the employee to contract with you, come to an agreement. And then after that, the next phase is the listen phase, which is really doing two things. One is make the employee feel heard, an emotional response, and the second part is to actually gather some intelligence. So we show the levels of listening, and what we share with people is that not everybody's a gifted, intuitive listener, but we can all at least listen at that accurate level, which is to paraphrase and match the language of the speaker. So one, they feel heard, and two, that you clarify exactly what they're sharing with you, because you will gather useful information when you do listen. And moving on to the next step, explore. That's where you want to ask the employee questions to get them to come up with solutions, pros and cons, possibilities. And again, we say, look, you can come in with some directives if the employee is not there yet, but you do want to start to build the capacity of the employee to start, independently, critically thinking of ways to solve some of these issues that you've agreed to solve. And after that, the action phase is one where you want the employee to actually speak out some commitments. And so the psychology behind the explore and action phase is that the more the employee talks, the more they own. When it's their ideas, when they say it, they're more likely to act it out and do it. And so we do use the language of commitments. What are your commitments? Because commitment's a strong word that, requires somebody to kind of put themselves on the line. And so we ask for those commitments. And again, this is a place where if you need to give directives because the employee's not there yet, that can actually be done. And then finally, in the review phase, we wrap everything up. We ask, what we contracted and agreed to set out to do. Have we accomplished that? Second part is setting up the follow-up. The follow-up typically say we're going to meet back in 2 weeks, and we're going to go, what I tell them as a coach, you're going to rinse and repeat. You're going to go right back to the contract phase and start with the employee and say, look, last time we met, we agreed that you were going to go out and take these action steps. So now you move into let's listen to those, let's explore what new actions do we need. So rinse and repeat. And the final last part in the review phase is to ask the employee what feedback can you give me as a coach so that I can better work with you, partner with you, meet your needs, support you. And that's very important for two reasons. One, psychologically, it's showing some vulnerability, which helps to build trust with your employee. And two, again, you will get useful information that you can then use to meet the needs of this individual, because we are all individuals and we need to know how to, work with people on an individual basis. So after that, they've been given the videos, the background, and now we ask them to practice using those clear coaching strategies. So we have them form groups of 3. We have one person in the role of the employee, one person as a supervisor, one as the observer, and we have the employee share a concern. We want the supervisor to act as the coach, using some of the clear coaching strategies. The observer watches, and we then share out after that to see, what was used by the supervisor or coach, what was the reaction of the employee. And the reason that we do this simulation is that I tell everybody in the class I don't like to do a sit and forget session. I like everybody to practice now, because if you don't practice right now, to go out in the field and practice and stumble with it is going to lead you to not wanting to use some of the strategies. So let's get the kinks out right now, at least initially. So we'd like to go through 2 rounds and switch roles so that people can get a couple experiences with it. And then we finish out by asking the audience what commitments are they willing to make about where they need to improve, or what are they going to add to their coaching toolbox. And we finish out with a few quick tips, releasing the pressure a little bit, saying, you don't have to be an expert coach. It is a growing process for the coach, but the most important thing is to get out there and start giving your employees attention, and having conversations as, just being a human. So I really enjoy doing the training. It's very lively, very interactive. It's a discussion as we go through it, and we have those simulations built in there. The role playing, which really people actually very much get into and enjoy. And we've gotten great reviews, as I said. And there's even a hunger in our organization for more of these trainings. So we've been doing it, but there's an appetite for more of it. So I'd love to share this at the May conference. Please ask me any further questions. Thank you so much.